Welcome to the 23rd celebration of 8/80, sponsored by Jewish Senior Life. President John F. Kennedy reminds us, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Today, our 8/80 honorees took that message to heart, and you will hear what wonderful Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, they have given our Detroit metropolitan community.
My name is Martin Herman. I'm a first-generation American. When I first came to Detroit in 1962, we moved into an apartment right across the street from Bagley School. There were 5 synagogues located within walking distance of our apartment. I eventually became associated with Adat Shalom, became a close friend of Rabbi Jacob Siegel, who was the founding rabbi of Adat Shalom. Our children were friends. We socialized together. When Adat Shalom moved, I didn't. And I still live in the same house in which I've lived since 1966. Time went by, and in 1989, my parents died within 4 months of one another. At the time, I knew about the downtown synagogue. I knew Rabbi Gamzee, but I was not much involved with it. But at the time, they had a daily minyan, morning and afternoon, and I said Kaddish there for 14 months. When I finished saying Kaddish, I said, look, they were here when I needed them. The least I can do is get involved with them. Consequently, I came to the downtown synagogue, hoping to become a member, maybe even an active member, but not at all interested in becoming involved in the mechanics, the administration of the place. Well, to make a long story short, a chazan at the time, Israel Idelson, was suffering from macular degeneration, so I stood next to him and prompted him like a prompter in an opera house, because the page would disappear right in front of his eyes. Since I've joined the synagogue, I've been extremely committed to its mission. I think it's very important to maintain a traditional or quasi-traditional Jewish presence in the city of Detroit. We have been and still are the only freestanding synagogue in the city. My wife Judith and I have been married for 65 years. We have 2 daughters, Ellen and Rebecca. We have 4 grandchildren, 2 girls, 2 boys. At the moment, I'm very involved in an organization called, the acronym is SOAR, the Society of Active Retirees. I teach a class each term called Experiencing Opera, in which I talk about operatic dramaturgy in general, and then relate what I say to the operas being performed downtown by the Michigan Opera Theater. At this point in my life, I'm 86 years old. I knew it was time to retire in 1994 when a student in a moment of pique told me I had a great future behind me. I try my best. As I say, I get a lot of repeat members, I shouldn't call them students, who come to my classes, and I ask them why they keep coming back. I said, you've heard all my jokes, you know all my stories. They say, yes, but the operas keep changing. I say, yes, that they do.
I grew up in Chicago in an immigrant neighborhood. My parents came from Russia. First my father, and then he brought my mother and older sister, and then there were, then my twin sister and I were born, and then a younger brother. I'm sad to say, but I am the only survivor in my family. However, the Sherbin family here is very large. My own children, we have 3 children. We have 3 sons, 3 daughters-in-law, and 8 grandchildren. And my husband, my wonderful husband, is Jerry Sherbin. We met in the summer of '51, and where we were both working at Mendelssohn's in South Haven. He was a waiter, I was a waitress, and we were earning money to go back to college. We were both working our way through school, and we will be married 64 years in September. Yiddish was my parents spoke Yiddish. They came to America, they didn't know English, so Yiddish was the language in our home. And so my first language was Yiddish, and I learned English on the streets, talking to, playing with the kids in the neighborhood. Later, when I got old enough to go to public school, my parents also sent us to Yiddish school, so we learned to read and write. And with those skills, I was able to, after I was married and I had some young children, I felt I had to do something. So I was able to get a job teaching Yiddish at Shalom Aleichem, which was great fun. One of the values in my home was to sei ein Mensch, and that means to be a person. And I think that established for me the beginnings of the importance of volunteering and giving back. I am a very faithful advocate for National Council of Jewish Women. That is where I have done a good number of hours of volunteer work. And I do my primary volunteer work with them is through Children's Advocates, where we work on guardianship cases through the probate court by the invitation of the probate judges, and our aim is for a child to be in the best place that is possible for him or her. Well, now you know about me, but I do want you to know more about the National Council of Jewish Women, which is an organization that has worked so hard in the Jewish community and the greater community to promote progressive ideas that help women, children, and families. And this year is a very important year because the National Council of Jewish Women is celebrating its 125th anniversary and acknowledging, and I want you to, and I love it as an organization, and it helps improve my life, I know. Meine Eltern haben gesagt zu mir, als zu sein ein Mensch ist sehr äußergewöhnlich Sache zu tun. Und ich sage zu euch, das ist sehr äußergewöhnlich für uns alle. It means my parents told me that to be a Mensch was very important in life, and I think it's important for all of us.
I grew up in a Jewish community as it existed in Detroit. I was born in Detroit, and I went to McCullough School, the Durfee Intermediate, Central High School, the University of Michigan. I went to Wayne State University. So to a certain extent, whatever I am was grew out of that soil in which I lived. And it was a very Jewish kind of soil, both voluntarily and involuntarily. My original goal, I got an MBA at the University of Michigan in 1951. In those days, there were 6 big national accounting firms, none of which hired Jews in Detroit. So the only option were small local firms, and that really wasn't what I wanted to do. And I remember that the class I liked best in the MBA program was called business law. When I decided I should become a lawyer, I was married, my wife is Suzanne, and I was able to go to law school and work. So I went to law school early in the morning and late at night. We came to Oak Park early. So Oak Park was becoming Jewish, but it wasn't totally Jewish. The area around it was not Jewish at all. So I got involved with the South Oakland Round Table of Christians and Jews, and in time became one of its vice chair people to kind of educate the people in Oakland County, where it was still common, by the way, to see signs, "No Jews," in certain areas of Oakland County, in Oak Park itself, in fact. One of the things that happened at Beth Shalom, we used to have a Friday night service, which was somewhat unusual for conservative synagogues in those days, and we would invite groups, churches, and so forth from the rest of Oakland County to come. And that was these groups were fascinating because they themselves were fascinated by the old story, they never met a Jew but never seen a Jewish service before. The most frequent question after the service was, what significance do the different colored caps have? They were talking about kippot. I think the thing that I think about most in the future is the world I lived in is not the world that my grandchildren or great-grandchildren live in. And I think the question for them, frankly, is why be Jewish? To a great extent, being Jewish was forced on us. We didn't have a lot of choices. Hopefully, I want them to see that there are advantages to being Jewish. It wasn't just that in my day, when Yiddish was common, they used to say, "Schwer zu sein a Yid," it's hard to be Jewish. It's hard to be Jewish, but nowadays it's hard to be Jewish not because of the oppression and virulent anti-Semitism. It's hard to be Jewish because it becomes a choice for you to make. And the reasons for that choice is what I hope I can supply to them. The idea of doing something for somebody else, the idea of volunteering, is not just the satisfaction that you'll get out of it, which is the sole reason for doing it, but that others realize, and perhaps it will help encourage other people to get involved in volunteerism and trying to do something, as Hillel said, if you're only for yourself, who are you?
I was actually born in Kansas in a corner house, and my grandpa was in another bedroom. He passed away the day I was born. And going through my mother's things this past Sunday, I had 16 members of my family over. And for the first time, going through my mother's pictures, I saw my great-grandpa and what he looked like. And then I was able to feel what happened on that day. I moved to Dearborn when I was about 3 months old, and that's where I grew up. And I guess my volunteer work really started in high school, not realizing because there was no name for it. You just took care of people. I volunteered here at Fleischman for 30 years, and to walk in the door and see some of these people and get the comments, get the hugs, I miss it. I didn't know where I wanted to be, so when I came, I was told they need help because they were trying to start a jewelry class. And the other two people that were working in it left, and I was in charge all of a sudden. So I knew nothing about this, and I had to learn. So in came the 20-pound test fishing line to put it on because it was strong enough for their hands to put it on. And I started buying beads that did not look like it belonged in kindergarten. And the class grew, and it went from me to, I had 10 volunteers for a while helping me out. And it was such a thrill to watch these people walk in the room, smiling, happy. And if they couldn't do it, I said, yes, you can do it. And I would get someone to help them, or I would help them. If they didn't finish in time, they were going to walk out of there with something. I stayed over. I didn't have to have lunch at a certain time. I was willing to do that. Before the Opera House opened, I went for a hard hat tour. And I saw the Opera House. It wasn't an opera house at the time, but with the water and the ceilings falling down. And I met our founder and director, David D. Cara. I'm on the board. I chair the General Directors Circle, which has been changed to the D. Cara Society. And this is for our contributors. And what's nice is when they walk into their lounge, they smile, they talk to each other, they have their chocolates that are donated by Saunders, they have a little snack that I arrange for ahead of time. And it gives me pleasure to watch them enjoy what was meant to be. My message for those sitting out here in the audience is, I like people, I love Detroit and all it has to offer, and I want to share it with everyone. I just keep running out of time. How lucky I am to be one of the 8 over 80, to share and hopefully encourage others to do what we have been doing. Tikkun Olam, repairing the world.
My name is Bernard Bernie Jonas. I am almost 93 years old. I've been blessed that I was married for 62 years before I lost my late wife, who was the apple of my eye. I am the richest man in the world. Why? I have 17 actual grandchildren, but with the spouses I have 37. And then I have the fruits that I have 67 great-grandchildren. I don't know all their names. I have it on the fridge. And every now and then, when I send a birthday card, I get it mixed up, so I'll tell them, go give it to your sister or your brother. I was born in Aurora, Illinois, and my late uncle came to Detroit. My grandfather went back to Europe because he felt that the United States wasn't Jewish enough for his daughters. So my uncle, for some reason, came to Detroit, and then my father followed him. And I could remember when I was 10, 11 years old, on the weekend, my father would take us 3 boys and put us on different corners, like in Trenton and Wyandotte, to sell fruit and vegetables. And that's the way he made his living. And I used to peddle door to door with my late father, selling bananas and strawberries. I volunteered at Odd Ezra for over 20 years, 3 days a week. And in 2007, I was elected the Volunteer of the Year. I enjoy helping people, and I feel by doing that I'm doing a mitzvah. Greatest lesson that I learned was from my father, of blessed memory. My father had a grocery store, and one afternoon 2 rabbis came for money. My dad said, you have to come back in the afternoon when my 2 sons are here. The 2 rabbis came back later that day when my 2 brothers were there. And my father said to the rabbis, tell your story to my sons. And the rabbis told why they were there. My father said, okay, now go upstairs and write a check. The rabbi said, Mr. Jonas, you own this business. Why do you have this come back? Says, I want my sons to learn tzedakah. And I learned from my father to try to help people in needs. And that's what I try to do.
And my story is, it's my birth certificate that's 82 years old, not me. Because I was born with the name, which I hide more than I do my age, of Mildred. And I don't use the name Mildred. Since I've been 11, I've been Mickey. So Mickey Sherman Grossman is 11 years younger than this Mildred Grossman you're talking about. I was born in Detroit. I went through Detroit schools. I graduated from Wayne State University. I was married in Detroit. I married a man from Detroit, Louis D. Grossman. I started out when I was going to Wayne And in the College of Education, you had to do community service. I was a member of a sorority. We had to do community service. I became the national vice president of my sorority. So I've always done things, and I volunteered with B'nai B'rith when I was going to Wayne, and then I became an advisor to a BBG chapter, and then I became a part-time assistant director during a time when they didn't have an assistant director. There were 4 of us who divided that responsibility. I can't remember not volunteering. In fact, part of my husband and I didn't meet through volunteering, but one of the first things we did together is, and we were both graduates at Wayne at that time, his fraternity used to go to, I think it was Northville Hospital, which was a tuberculosis hospital, at Christmas time, and take gifts to kids and entertain them. So we worked out a thing where my sorority and his fraternity did it together, and just did those kinds of things. Through Jewish Family Service, I have shopped for seniors who can't get out to shop. I have shopped for people in this building, Jewish Senior Life brings them something, reminds them who they are and that the Jewish community cares about them. And we do care about them, and we're part of them. I don't think enough publicity gets out there how much we care for one another. And when I realized that there are Jewish people who wouldn't be able to eat, who wouldn't be able to have a good meal except for what Jewish Senior Life provides for them, it's good to be part of it. It's like there's so much more. What else can I do? What else can I do?
My name is Jack Gunn. I was born in a small city in eastern Poland. At the age of 8, my parents, my sister, and all my family was one of the 1.5 million Jews that were mass murdered in Eastern Europe. My brother, who was 10 years older, and myself somehow escaped. Finally, the fighting ceased in our area. We came back to our hometown again, still hoping maybe somebody else from our families would survive. Unfortunately, nobody else survived. And my brother decided it's time to get out of Eastern Poland. We traveled through the heart of Poland. We got connected with a Jewish organization. They were actually from the Brecha, and they were coming into Poland trying to get the refugees out of Poland. When I came to America, the first 4 years I lived with an uncle and aunt of mine in a little city by the name of Breckenridge, Pennsylvania. There I started school. They put me in the 6th grade. I didn't know a word of English. But the will to learn was there, and I learned very, very quickly. At that time, my brother lived in Detroit with my new sister-in-law's family. She had an uncle and aunt in Detroit. So my brother took me back with him to Detroit. I finished the last 2 years at Central High School. I went into the service. I came out. I established a successful business in Detroit. When I retired, I was at 59, and I decided that I have to dedicate the rest of my life, especially telling my story. I speak an awful lot, especially at the Holocaust Center. I also go to different schools, organizations, and tell my story. And I want the people to be aware of all the tragedies that can occur from hatred racism, bullying, and being a bystander. And that's the most important part. There were too many bystanders. Hitler could have never accomplished what he did if there wouldn't have been so many bystanders.
I've been given the question, how do I want people to remember me? You mean, what do they talk about after they talk about my gefilte fish and my arugula, my 11 Afghans that were hand-knit, and don't forget my hole-in-one? Well, I wonder too, what are they going to say? So I started thinking about my legacy and my family. I have a book here, and it is by Sidney Bolkowski, and it tells the story of the early years of the Detroit Jewish community. In this cover photo of a groundbreaking for a new Hebrew school is a picture of my grandfather, Isaac August. He came from Russia in the 1880s, settled in Detroit, and became a community leader. I lived in historic times. After the war, when the rise of Israel, the state of Israel, became a reality, we were so thrilled. And I believed that I had a personal responsibility to do my part for the Jewish people. So when my mother, Mabel Kaplan, took me to my very first Federation meeting, I was hooked. I have to talk about my husband, Hugh Greenberg. We met in the 4th grade, we dated in high school, and we were married shortly before we graduated, both of us from the University of Michigan. Hugh's family, too, had a long history of service to the community. His father and my grandfather served together on the board of the Jewish Home for the Aged, which was the forerunner for Jewish senior life. So when Hugh and I were married, it was understood that we would both be committed, active volunteers. And that's what we did together for the next 60 years. My career in volunteerism centered around the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit. I was president of the women's division, now called Women's Philanthropy, and interested in education. I believed in the saying, educate a woman and you educate a family. I was a vice president of the United Jewish Charities and on the agency boards of Sinai Hospital and the Jewish Family Service. I remember the day that Diane and Emery Klein came to the Jewish Family Service meeting and told us that there were poor, hungry Jews in our community whom we were not serving. At that time, the Jewish Family Service was not an outreach agency. They expected all the clients to come to them. So with Edith Jackier, we organized a task force that went from door to door in all the neighborhoods to find the Jews who we didn't even know existed and who needed our assistance. And we found many. And I'd like to add that our children, Danny, Amy, and Ned, and our daughters-in-law, Alana and Elisa, have followed in our footsteps and have made a difference. So how do I want to be remembered? Love of family, love of community, love of the Jewish people, a strong sense of history, and a desire to give back to make a better world. And that, I hope, is my legacy.